So in the previous video on using the 4-jaw independent check, we mainly focused on how to accurately center a piece and to get that centerability to where we can remove it, put the piece back in, and get it recentered very closely. That's only one aspect of the 4-jaw. The other aspect of the 4-jaw is the ability to turn odd shapes or off-center shapes or square shapes, triangles, other shapes along those lines. So I'm going to show you some of those examples down here on the table, and some of them we'll put on the lathe and do some turning on. We're going to pick on this little scrap piece again and a couple other scrap pieces that we've been using here to do some different operations to see how we can do these things with the 4-jaw more safely than we've done with other methods, such as trying to do squares or rectangles in the 3-jaw, or attempting to turn pieces off-center on the faceplate as we did with this. So for our first example, I've just got a step block in here, and as we can see, it's a right triangle. I don't have this clamped in here right now, but this would securely hold the piece if we wanted to, say, drill a hole in it to make it easier to hang up on a workbench wall or something along those lines. So here's an odd shape that we can securely hold through the clamping forces here. Now we would have to be careful. We might want to put something along this side to protect these teeth to make sure we didn't crush the teeth as we clamp it, but that's one sample of a shape we could hold easily in the 4-jaw. And remember that we always have to take into consideration those forces of moving in different directions. And we would be captive here with the jaws if we tightened them down. We would have a friction fit for it to move to the right, and then we would have a hard stop to the left. And obviously we've got hard stops for the rotational motion of the piece as well. So here I'm clamping a rectangular piece of brass in the 4-jaw, and I've reversed jaws 1 and 3 in this case, and place the brass on them, and then I'm going to bring jaws 2 and 4 in their normal orientation to clamp the piece. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down, and we'll throw it on the lathe and show how we can face or surface or size a square piece. So I've got that piece in the lathe now here. This is the first time we've turned a square piece. This is going to be an interrupted cut as we turn it. As always, make sure that you can rotate the piece without impacting the cutter before you turn on the lathe. So done that. We'll bring it back close to center. And as always, remember your safety glasses. And just took a very light cut there. So very simple and straightforward. We are getting very small curls of metal because we are taking, again, that kind of interrupted cut there. And there we can see the finish on the brass. So it's nice. Compared to the mill, I mean, you'll get a little bit of a different finish on the mill, and you'll see that as we go on, but here you get that kind of circular or starburst effect due to just a simple method of cutting. So that can sometimes be decorative, and this is a case where you may sometimes want to use the lathe to surface a piece versus this is a surface cut, and we've got a little bit of a marring on it, but this is a surface cut from the mill. Not nearly as decorative, but it's also a fine finish. Okay, so now I've got the round piece we were playing with before on the faceplate chucked in here, and it's not as far out to the edge as before. We could actually move it further out to the edge by using this outer step, but we are going to start to run into some problems just with the diameter of the piece is going to want to slip through those jaws. So we want to make sure that we, again, check all of our movements whether it be front to back, right, with the piece being to where the point where it can't slip through these jaws, front to back, top to bottom. Towards the face, we've got a hard stop on the jaws themselves. To the right, we've got a friction from the four jaws. Okay, so I'm actually glad this happened. I didn't notice it when I was first putting it in, which is why we look at it again and again. These two jaws are actually impacting each other, so I can't really safely hold the piece with the jaws in this method, so I need to reverse this jaw back to its original direction. And then we'll be able to move it in and clamp it securely in the forward direction. If we wanted to, we could do the same thing with this jaw, but for now, we're fine there. You want to be careful not to move these too far in because the amount of threading that you'll still have engaged. Now these are pretty fine threads, and we're not going to be putting a whole lot of pressure on those threads in the way that we're going to be doing this cut, so I'm not too terribly worried about that. Now before we did a turning operation along the length, this time I'm just going to do a facing operation since I'm already in that general setup. Again, always check to make sure everything's clear, that nothing's going to impact. With aluminum, if we wanted to use a little bit of lubrication, we could. Just for the video purpose here, I'm not going to put any lubrication on there. Okay, so I just took a couple of passes there. Wasn't really going to any particular edge. In fact, let's go ahead and turn the tool and we'll do this right. So I've turned our tool to where we can do a sharper shoulder cut. Now this is a case where I should probably switch to a boring bar because I am impacting the face of my cutter here on the underside, because I'm more or less starting to get to the point where I'm doing a hole into the piece, even though it's definitely an off-center hole. Just for fun, we're going to do a little bit of cutting on this face. So here we're holding the piece much more securely. If we wanted to take a deeper cut, we certainly can. This isn't a cut with the way we were holding on the face plate that I'd recommend. And right now we're not really making anything. I mean, we're just mangling this workpiece as a demonstration for the types of things that you can do. Loosen that up and pull it out. So you can see how we've turned those steps on the inside face here, definitely in an odd way, and we've started to turn some of the outside diameter here. This is what we did previously with the faceplate, was this edge, but now we have another edge and another step out here. We've just pretty much mangled the workpiece, but this is just for practice. So these types of things you should really do and learn how and what it feels like, and use some cheap aluminum like this. It's fairly easy to turn, not very expensive. Just get a feel for the machine and get comfortable with everything. Get comfortable with the different work holding methods and challenge yourself a little bit in those regards before you start making a real project that matters to you. So that's all we're going to do on the forward jaw, and using it to where pieces are not centered, or using it for square pieces, triangular pieces as we showed at the beginning. briefly, and then creating some odd cuts with off-centering a piece as we've done here.